I would say that uncertainty is definitely a part of my everyday experience.
I have not seen my parents for over 3 years now.
As a black man, I will never feel 100% safe in this country.
It's the brokenness of me that makes me cling to God so heavily.
My name is Justin Koo. I'm born and raised in Southern California, and I make YouTube and podcast content for the internet. I would say that uncertainty is definitely a part of my everyday experience.
Hi, my name is Kendra Arsenal. I am primarily a creator and a communicator. And I love writing devotionals, I love writing poetry. And right now I'm currently studying my Master's of Divinity at Andrews University Theological Seminary.
I moved here in 2014 and I've been in the United States for about 6 years. I came here with my sister and my mom and dad. They still live in India, so I moved here and I'm staying with my aunt and my uncle.
Yeah, and when I tell you, like, I checked it so many times with my mom, like, before I was over at the window, and then I was like, no, like, I like, like this stuff in the background, so I was like, okay, well, let's just move. It's crazy how this is working, but we are recording, so...
So of course 2020 hits, and actually the first couple of months are awesome. I'm speaking at conferences, at churches, at events all over the country. I think in the first 2 months, I'd actually spoken 20 different times, and so it really felt like we were finally getting out there, that word is spreading and that God is blessing us for our faithfulness. And it was an exciting time. But then, as everyone knows, that's not how the rest of the year played out. Coronavirus hit. And I remember this one day in particular because it was a day that all the airlines shut down and travel all over the world was basically restricted, which for someone who's like myself, who does a lot of his work traveling, this was a huge blow. In fact, in a 24-hour window, I lost about 6 months worth of work.
So, COVID-19. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. Right before, or like in the beginning, when COVID was getting serious, I was working on prep in the production office as an office PA on an MTV movie. That's what was going on when I first heard about it, and there were speculations that maybe things were going to get worse. Nobody really knew. Fast forward. That production shut down, along with literally every production in Atlanta has come to an halt.
So instead of a traditional graduation, we ended up having an online graduation, which was super thoughtful of the school, and I'm really happy they did that. And we also had a mini drive-by for all the students that were in town, so that was really nice of them. It was overwhelming to see, all the cars drive by and just celebrate it with us, even though I didn't know half of them. It was nice to see them be so supportive.
When everything changed, I think one of the kind of prophecies and Bible teachings that was rolling through my head at the time was the story that Jesus says that when he comes, he's going to come like a thief in the night. And that it's going to be something that we're not prepared for. We're going to have another agenda. And he talks about us being caught off guard. And I think that that's what this pandemic was. I mean, the epic proportions at which it arrived and the drastic changes that it made to the economy and to our job situations and just to life in general is so dramatic and so out of left field. It was something that nobody could have prepared for.
The life as a contractor, life as a social media ministry, it's already uncertain. You don't know if it's even going to work. And so the fact that we lost 6 months of momentum in the snap of a fingers was a really tough blow to receive.
For me, even when I do eventually go back to work, which I don't even know when that's going to be, like, I'm never going to feel 100% safe. I could wear 3 masks. I could wash my hands all the time, have hand sanitizer, like, at the hip, ready to go. But it's, as long as COVID is still out there, and especially as long as we don't have a cure, it's like or a vaccine rather, there's always going to be that uncertainty of like, am I 100% safe being back at work? But it's like, I have to go to work eventually. Like, I can't just stay home and you know, that's not going to work forever.
And so for me, I think something that was really being spoken to in the moment was, how do I be comfortable with change? You know, I didn't realize how much of maybe an older traditionalist type person I was. You know, we get stuck into these patterns and we get into the ideas of like how things should be. But things change, and learning how to change with them is something that's never been easy. Also, I'm somebody who I like being able to plan my future. I like being able to know what 5 and 10 years is going to look like. And just to have the reminder that everything can change in a moment.
We planned to fly my family in from India, and that didn't happen. So that was pretty upsetting, just because I have not seen my parents for over 3 years now. And it's kind of hard to see, you know, people here run to their parents when they, you know, need something, when they're going through it. And for me to not be able to do that, it's kind of frustrating. And I wish that, you know, they were here with me.
I figured, why not do a little bit of writing? You know what I mean? Like, I've always enjoyed writing. It's always something that I've wanted to do. So I kind of decided, like, you know, I was sitting on a few ideas for like television, for like TV shows. So I was like, you know what, while I have time at home, why don't I just, you know, try to start developing some of these ideas that I have for television. And that's kind of what I decided to do. So, you know, I've started developing the sitcom idea that I have.
Yeah, I had just lost a ton of work. I didn't know if any of the projects I had planned were actually going to be able to work out anymore. And yet here I am just feeling, no, this is okay. This is good. This is actually an opportunity. And I believe that God's going to show up.
Yeah, I feel like with COVID-19, I'm never gonna feel 100% safe going out. But you know what? At the same time, I feel more safe with COVID than I do going out as a black man. And I know that it's an interesting like tie-in. It's a totally different thing going on. But I mean, if you look at what's happening in America right now, not even America, just like across the world, just the racial divide and the injustice that's going on. Like, so many African American men and women are being unjustly killed by the police over things that they shouldn't, like, I shouldn't have to be afraid to go out up the street, whether I'm walking or driving. I shouldn't have to be afraid to be stopped by the cops. If a cop pulls me over, I shouldn't have to fear that this might escalate and I don't know, I might end up either being attacked or shot and killed. Like, I don't want to have that fear of like going out and then becoming a hashtag or becoming another person on a sign during a protest. Like, it's scary, you know, like it's a real thing.
I think another benefit, as strange as that might sound, that's come out of this pandemic is that it has forced everybody to sit and listen to a national conversation about race, right? So after George Floyd was killed, it forced the conversation to say, we're going to spend some time and we're going to look at this. This is not the first time that it's happened. This has been happening for centuries, ever since slaves were brought over to the Americas, right? Like, this has been a Black experience in America for a very, very long time. And so it forced people to say, you're not going to work and you're not doing anything else but sitting at home, so let's talk about this.
So my main form of contribution towards the Black Lives Matter has been solely social media, just because I am very concerned about the virus, and its potential effects on my family. So I've been supporting it, from a distance, just because I want to be cautious about how it would affect my uncle and my aunt. But it is frustrating because I want to be out there with the crowd, fighting for justice as well. But at the moment, I'm doing as much as I can.
As a Black man, I will never feel 100% safe in this country. And it's sad because I may not feel 100% safe anywhere I go, like, around the world. Like, it's not just, it's happening crazy in America, but like it's a global thing, and it's something I have to worry about, something I have to worry about for my future kids, and just, it's scary.
I'm not Black, so I don't really know exactly what it is to be like in their shoes, to face that same oppression. So I've been trying to educate myself on it. My friends have been helping me out with it as well. I've been learning through social media, the news, and the fact that it's spread to so many countries, it just shows that light needs to be shed on the injustice around the world.
So the internet's done a lot of things to how we communicate, how we learn, and really how we interact with each other. It's made information so easy and so readily accessible. By the push of a single button, I can actually find out nearly anything in the world that I ever wanted. And so this is really awesome for those of us who want to learn, but this is also really confusing for those who maybe aren't willing to actually dig deeper. For every article that you have saying point A, you have 100 articles that refute it and talk about point B. And this is true about politics, this is true about religion, this is true about social justice, or fill in the blank. And so I think this is one of the challenging parts about today's day and age, is that information used to be the way that you discover what is actually right and what's wrong and how you ought to live. Whoever had the best argument or the best data seemed to be the number one way that you would convince someone else. But clearly what we're seeing today is that it's not as simple as that anymore.
Will we actually see change from the kind of protests that have happened, from the conversations that have been opened up about race in America? And I'm hoping that incremental change will happen. I'm hoping drastic change will happen. But I think realistically, there are people who have been on the front lines for a long time, who have been, saying the same thing for years. And I think that voice is being, magnified a little bit more. And so more people are having access to conversations they didn't have access to. And maybe there'll be change in a way that is, internal with some people. That they'll remove themselves from certain conversations or social spaces that have become racist, or they'll become more aware of their own social privileges and hopefully use their place of power to be able to reach down and help somebody else who is not like themselves.
I'm proud of who I am. I'm proud of where I come from. I'm proud of where my ancestors come from. And at the end of the day, no matter how hard it gets, I wouldn't change being Black for anything. I wouldn't trade it in to be any other race. I love being Black, and I think I'm gonna love being Black for the rest of my life, no matter how hard it gets, because that's a part of who I am. That's how God made me, and I know that if God made me this way, then that means that it was supposed to happen. And I'm not a mistake. And my skin color is not a mistake.
So if I could give any advice to someone who's struggling with uncertainty right now, I guess it would simply be this: hurry up and die already. Jesus talks about how if you try to save your life, you'll end up losing it. But if you lose your life for his sake, you'll end up finding it. And I think that there's this really interesting paradigm where if you live life for yourself and you seek to gain the world that only profits you so much, that there's an alternative way to live. And when you realize that your life is no longer your own, but it's Christ who lives in you, I think it really, in a very real sense, frees you from the worries of tomorrow, knowing that God is good, that he loves you, that he cares for you, and that you can actually trust him. I think it changes the way that we interact with the world.
It's a crazy world that we live in, but if there's one thing that I do know is that there is hope.
My mom passed away a few years ago, very suddenly, very prematurely, going through a lot of other different traumatic relationship experiences. It's the brokenness of me that makes me cling to God so heavily. It's the fact that I am, like Jacob, crushed at my hip, where the core of my strength is, that I have to lean so heavily upon who God is.
I think if there were no uncertainties and I knew what my next step would be, it would make life so much easier. I would be singing 9 to 5. I would be putting out music. And it would not even bother me to be in the studio the entire day, because in the end I am doing what I love, and it's something I look forward to and hopefully I will achieve. But that's not the reality of things, and that's okay though. I will still continue to work towards that.
Yeah, so we don't really make a lot of plans. We just kind of ease into and make ourselves comfortable just being uncertain, not knowing all the time, because God's good and he's got our back and we don't need to worry about it. One thing that we see in the immediate future, and one thing that we value, I guess, right now as a family, is flexibility and the ability to be mobile and to pivot and to shift wherever God calls us. And so I guess what that looks like right now is my wife and I are looking into potentially getting one of those Sprinter vans and converting it so that we can actually live on the road, so that we can literally go wherever it is that God calls us, and that we can just simply be faithful wherever it is that God's inviting us to join him at work.
It's part of our journey where there is so much uncertainty. The only thing that we could do moving forward, or the only thing that I can do moving forward, is to have faith. Have faith in the day-to-day and to trust the process. Sometimes the process is not a fun place. It's a place where we are crushed. It's a place where we are bruised, but through that God is making wine. Some fruit is raised to be crushed, and the grape is raised to be crushed. And so in that same vein, sometimes in our lives, we will go through that same process. And, but through it, God is making a people who are so dependent upon him.
If you're watching this, just know that not only am I going to be okay and everything's going to work out for me the way that it was intended to, but I think it's going to be even better than what I have planned for myself. So you can go ahead, if you're watching this, just cut back to this when I win my first Oscar, when I win that Emmy, when I'm writing for television, when my sitcom makes it, and everybody is watching it on TV, dying of laughter because it's so funny and also so heartfelt. I just want you to remember this conversation, okay? Remember me recording this, and just I just know that at the end of the day, I'm gonna be successful. And I don't know entirely when, so don't quote me on it, but I know it's gonna happen.